Gentlemen, esteemed guests, and distinguished participants, I extend a warm welcome to all of you for our first session, Jihad in Indian Subcontinent and Bharat's National Security. As we embark on this insightful journey, I kindly request everyone to uphold the decorum of this esteemed gathering. We encourage a respectful and civil atmosphere throughout our discussion. Please reserve any questions you may have for the end of the presentations, directing them specifically to the speaker in question. So, without any further ado, it is my great honor to introduce our session chair, Major General Dr. Rajan Kochar. Major General Dr. Rajan Kochar, a recipient of Vishisht Seva Medal by the President of India, is distinguished former MGAOC Central Command in the Indian Army. His illustrious career includes commanding crucial logistics units such as Central Ordnance Depot and Divisional Ordnance Units in various infantry and rapid divisions. His service record is further marked by active duty in the challenging terrains of Jammu and Kashmir and the Northeast, earning him the Army Commander's Commendation twice. Beyond his exemplary military career, Major General Dr. Rajan Kochar is also an academic scholar, holding a doctorate in emotional intelligence and is a certified NLP practitioner coach. Currently, he serves as the Vice Chairman of the National Council of News and Broadcasting and is the Senior Advisory Board member of Indic Researchers Forum. We are privileged to have such an esteemed leader and scholar chairing this session. Please join me in welcome Major General Dr. Rajan Kochar. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Satya, for your.
Sorry for the disturbance, sir. Dr. Anshuman Behra is also there. So all the
Okay, all right. Thank you, Satya, for your introduction. I welcome all our panelists of session number 1, Dr. Anshuman Behra, Lalit Ambadar, and Dr. Nand Kishore. And it will be an extreme honor and a privilege for Indic Research Forum and its scholars to listen to these 3 wonderful experts we have on a variety of topics. Before I invite them, I would just like to briefly give my opening remarks, and then I will invite Mr. Lalit to start the proceedings. The topic for today, as we are all aware, is jihad in the Indian subcontinent and Bharat national security. Today in the audience, I see a large number of young scholars. So it's very important for them to understand this very concept of jihad before we tackle the larger issues of national security. Jihad is an Arabic word which literally means striving or struggling, or to work for a noble cause with determination. It doesn't mean a holy war. So it's important to understand that when people speak of jihad, we should look for something noble rather than a holy war. But unfortunately, in recent time, the lion's share of terrorism has been perpetuated in the name of Islam. Today we see jihad being shrouded in 2 basic factors, and we'll be discussing these factors in detail: religious and ideological. Today, being an army man, I can say that you can modernize armies, but will it prevent attacks on our soil and loss of lives? So this is an important point to ponder here, because we spend a large amount of our budget in making our defense forces strong. But have we looked at the elements which are trying to weaken the country from inside? I think that is one aspect which is extremely important, and I'm sure our panelists will be able to analyze these factors today. We all know this concept of jihad, or the worldview, actually exists in 2 camps. Dar-e-Islam, the house of Islam as it called the Muslim countries, and Dar-e-Harb, the house of war, that is countries ruled by any regime but Islam, which are pitted against each other until the final victory of Islam, it is important to understand this radical mindset of the jihadis who want to perpetuate into each society to ensure a, a Muslim caliphate, which is something which they want to control each and every nation which has a Muslim population and for which some kind of support is there for them. And it's also important to understand that they had tried this thing in Afghanistan, Palestine, Kashmir, Chechnya, and Spain. And they did not have any great effect until the this watershed actually came in Afghanistan, where they actually realized that you could throw out a non-Muslim force from a country by your sheer jihadi might. As far as India is concerned, I would like to highlight to all a statement issued by the Ministry of Home Affairs in the Rajya Sabha, Jammu, and with regard to Jammu and Kashmir. Uh, if you see the period 2018 to 2022, uh, there have been 761 terrorist attacks in this one state itself, resulting into 174 civilian deaths. Also, there have been 626 counter-terror operations in the same period, accounting for uh, almost 308 security personnel who have been martyred, and approximately 1,002 terrorists which have been eliminated. So you can see that the Indian jihadi movement constitutes an important internal security issue, but it has an external dimension. So that what we have actually seen today happening in Israel, and I happened to listen to the Israeli ambassador in our inaugural session, it is aptly clear that please that we should not take our neighborhood lightly, because most of these attacks are planned and launched in these areas. Today we know that Pakistan, though it is out of FATF, but still Pakistan, the terrorist launch pads are existing today. Lashkar-e-Taiba and the it's in its full element. It is trying to infiltrate into our regions, trying to carry out attacks on the armed forces. So we are all aware of this sort of a situation, and and moving our focus from Kashmir, if we come to Bangladesh also, we see a very large movement coming up in Bangladesh known as Jamaat-e-Islami. So we have you expert on this, Dr. Anshuman Behra, who would be speaking in detail on this and telling us how this movement has grown exponentially in Bangladesh over the years. It may have small numbers. A couple of thousands of people are involved in this. Almost, figures say that 73,000 odd people are involved in this movement out of a total Bangladesh population of 174 million. But it represents a very, very potent enemy in the neighborhood. See, if we could expect this kind of a terrorist attack happening in Israel, we can very much foresee that in case it gets replicated in our region, are we prepared for it? What are we doing about it? And do we have the wherewithal to tackle this kind of a menace? Basically, one important aspect of jihad is the cyber dimension, which I think the panelists would like to deliberate upon, especially in Kashmir, which is also known as digital jihad, which was popularized by the ISIS in Syria as well as Iraq. This propaganda is an extremely important way of spreading and radicalizing the youth of our border state Jammu and Kashmir, and triggering a conflict through cyberspace can have a substantial impact today without involving a major cost. So this aspect, I think we would need to actually consider in a slightly more detail. And uh, as far as the uh, Kashmir issues and anti-terrorism and anti-insurgency operations are concerned, there has been a large success by the armed forces over the years. Almost, we have been able to bring down 70% of those infiltration. But what is important here is within the internal security complex of our own nation, what are we doing about the rise of radicalism in some of our own states? We are aware that in some of our own states, beside Jammu and Kashmir, we have forces like uh, this PFI, uh, Populist Front of India, which has its roots today in 23 states. So, can you imagine a terrorist outfit which has been banned is still able to operate in almost 23 states in the country, and there is a dossier on it which has been prepared uh, by the DIA, and it's already there with the government. So these are important issues I think we need to deliberate upon, and also we would be discussing the Deobandis, we would be discussing the Wahhabis. How are they able to influence these terrorist organizations and the Islamic groups? Eminent experts are there on the panel here, and I would be requesting them to give us an insight about these organizations and what are we as a collaborative approach to counter jihad in the Indian subcontinent as it directly impinges on our national security. So these are the important issues we will be discussing. Now I would be inviting our first speaker, Mr. Lalit Ambardar. I have met him, he may not remember, but I have met him on Republic TV a number of times, and we have been on a panel a long time back. He is a security and a current affairs analyst. He is one of the most prominent voices on our TV channels. He regularly contributes to the response columns of the leading dailies like Times of India, Hindustan Times, and dozens of published letters are there to his credit. He is the program coordinator for foreign and the TV road bureaus, and he writes on Kashmir. There cannot be any more qualified expert on Kashmir than Lalit. He is born and brought up in Srinagar. He is presently based in Delhi, and academically also he's a master in civil engineering and has nearly 3 decades of experience in building design. And we are really fortunate in the IDF to have a person of his caliber, and he will be speaking on the jihadi ecosystem in Kashmir. Over to you, Lalit sir.
Thank you, General Sir. It's always a privilege to share screen space, TV space with you, sir. Thank you very much. And you have given such a beautiful, such an insightful introduction to the day's topic. I think it's going to be very, very useful to all the participants as well as the listeners who are subscribing to this particular program today. Well, starting with jihad. See, jihad conflicts anywhere in the world are inspired by pan-Islamism, which is what? Pan-Islamism is inspired by what? It's led by exactly two-nation theory of supremacy and exclusivity, which on the basis of which India was partitioned, and that's what leads jihad conflicts around the globe. Everywhere, it's either me or no one else. That's what it's about. And in the Indian context, I would like to just briefly quote the history. Two-nation theory in Indian context was propounded by Sir Syed, so-called Sir Syed Ahmed Khan, in his 1888 lecture in Meerut. I want everybody to read that lecture in detail, and you will get to know why India has been, why jihad has been bleeding India for the past 1,000 years and continues to bleed India till late, and we are not even taking cognizance of it. What he says there is Hindus and Muslims are two nations. They cannot live together. They cannot share the power together. One has to fight against the other, and who will vanquish the other will rule. And if need be, we'll call our brothers from the west, mountains of the west, swords to be drawn, blood will flow, and the war will be fought. This is what Sir Syed Ahmed Khan has said it, and then since then, everybody took it over. So India has been the worst victim of global jihad, and it begins 1,000 years ago when Muhammad bin Qasim began the Ghazwa-e-Hind campaign with the capture of Sindh, and it continues till date. Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible, sir.
Okay, so there are so many incidents in the history which we don't have time to quote now. But one thing I can tell you, they always, for all these 1,000 years, there has been resistance wars going all across India against the jihadists, and that's why we today can claim proudly that 85% of the population of India continues to be Hindu, not because the occupiers, the Islamic occupiers, were benevolent, because we fought resistance wars. And the biggest achievement, nevertheless, the biggest achievement of this Ghazwa-e-Hind was the partition of India, 1947 partition, when India was divided over the dead bodies of Hindus and Sikhs. And come to think of it, in Delhi, our secular polity, the then Nehruvian Congress decided to, officially or formally denounce Jinnah's two-nation theory, on the basis of which the partition route took place. But in Kashmir, the same two-nation theory was allowed to flourish in the name of Article 370. The Article 370 was principally given to Sheikh Abdullah only to have his own sheikhdom, because Kashmir was supposed to be a Muslim majority state. So come on, what kind of hypocrisy this was? In Delhi, you said we don't accept two-nation theory, but in Kashmir we allowed it to flourish, and the result was, in contemporary sense, what he called Kashmir Jihad. Although Kashmir has been suffering from Islamic Jihad for the past 700 years, and Kashmiri Hindus, the aborigine Kashmiri Hindus, have suffered 7 genocidal evictions over these 7 centuries, and the last one came, ironically, in independent India, after so-called independence, 40 years after so-called independence, and under very secular Indian constitution. And let me tell you, Kashmir Jihad is not all about Kashmir only. Their eyes are on in Lal Killa in Delhi. You talked about General Sir, you talked about Lashkar-e-Taiba. Lashkar-e-Taiba was founded in Kabul long before Taliban were born, by none other than Hafiz Sayyid and Osama bin Laden together, especially for Kashmir Jihad. And we try to ignore that. The names have changed, the nomenclature changes, but the agenda remains one, which is all Islamism is all about, is expansionist, and it is terror infested. So and then in 90s, when the Taliban took reign over Kabul for the first time, you know what reverberated from the mosques of Pakistan, all across Pakistan? Hum jashn Kabul mana chuke, chalo ab Kashmir chale, Kashmir chale. This is what is Kashmir about. I feel very sorry, General Sir, with due regards to you, I have to contest many veterans on the public platforms who say Kashmir is not jihad movement, Kashmir is not pan-Islamism inspired. Well, we know that every jihadist from every Muslim country has participated in Kashmir jihad against India and Kashmir. We had our soldiers decapitated by jihadists, and you know what? The heads of Indian soldiers were exchanged trophies with General Musharraf when he was chief of the army staff. And We try to ignore that. We know it, we try to ignore that. That's why this continues to bleed India. Even now when we know Kashmir Jihad has inflicted so much of harm on India, I can say that there's not a single district in India from where a son has not has not been martyred fighting Kashmiri jihadis in Kashmir on the side of India. And we tend to not to acknowledge it. Even now, Kashmiri Hindu genocide is not being acknowledged formally. Formally, we have not even one jihadist has not been convicted for a murder, mass murder, or rape of a Kashmiri Hindu in Kashmir. And you talked about FATF. We have given a carte blanche to Pakistan FATF. I'm sorry to say we on ourselves say Kashmir Jihad is waning. It's not. I follow jihad conflict around the globe. Tell me one place in the world where jihad has been vanquished. Not even one. There seems to be not a real clear understanding of what jihad is all about. Russians stayed in Afghanistan for 10 long years. Then Americans for 20 long years. In the name of development, Indians have invested so much in Afghanistan. We built their parliament. It's a different story in the Saudi parliament. Now fatwas are issued to how many lashes have to be, how many times a woman has to be lashed if her ankle is exposed. The same very parliament. And Pakistan, in Afghanistan, back for 40 years. So jihad is not all about development. Jihad is not all about spending money or tourism. We tend to confuse Naxal terrorism with Kashmir Jihad. It's very important to distinguish between two. Naxal terrorism is because of deprivation, economic deprivation, because of exploitation. Once you introduce development in that Naxal infested areas, I'm sure we'll be able to overcome that. Even Northeast terrorism in Mizoram, for example, Lal Denga was an Indian Army Jawan, and he, because of negligence by the center, and he had to resort to arms rebellion against India. And he has been in Pakistan. He has been in the he was patronized by Pakistan first in East Pakistan when Bangladesh was liberated, and then he shifted his headquarters to Karachi. Even after that, once you reached an accord, you could do that, and the Northeast is flourishing today because it was because of negligence of the center. Kashmir Jihad or Jihad anywhere is not about at all development or investment. Kashmir was always on the if Bihar got 10 rupees from the center, Kashmir always got 100 rupees. Indian Exchequer has always ensured that an ordinary Kashmiri Muslim's life standard is above average the rest of the rest of India. And even now I can say with confidence, jihad conflicts everywhere in the world only lead to death and destruction. We Indian army, Indian soldiers, Indian security system has ensured that there's least possible destruction in Kashmir. And can you imagine the real estate prices in Kashmir all along this turmoil are growing at almost at the same rate as in the rest of India. So Kashmir Jihad is not about lack of development. Kashmir Jihad is not about less of tourism. It's not about lack of money. It's only about the same supremacy and exclusivity of Islam. यहाँ क्या चलेगा निज़ाम मुस्तफ़ा. कश्मीर में रहना होगा, अल्लाह अकबर कहना होगा. पाकिस्तान से रिश्ता क्या ला इलाहा इल्लल्लाह. These were the slogans in the backdrop of which Kashmiri Hindus suffered genocide. You saw what Israel suffered on 7th of October. I can tell you what Kashmiri Hindus have suffered is not less savagery. Quoting the ex-Inspector General of Police, Kashmir Division, SM Sahai. And he recently, although he has a different view about Kashmir files, he calls it, against a particular community. But I want to bring it to notice to everybody because, as I said, there seems to be a lack of understanding of what we have on hand in Kashmir. It continues to be there. He says that Kashmir file, I think it was the faux pas because we were criticizing Kashmir files. on this plea that it demonizes the whole community of Muslims in Kashmir. But at the same time, he said there have been worse incidents of barbarity committed on Kashmir Hindus than what was depicted in Kashmir Files. And he quotes one incident that in 90s he was asked to report to a particular place. If you are familiar with Srinagar, Kralakot is the heart of old city Srinagar. It was hub of activities once upon a time. And there he is called to attend to a emergency call where a mother and daughter Hindu duo had been raped, and both had been shot in the vagina. This is Inspector General S.M. Sahai telling it to a blogger very recently. And then in the same breath, he says, in spite of this kind of violence, the masses were with the movement. And yet he has an audacity to criticize the Kashmir Files. In the same interview, he tends to compare the Kashmiri jihadists with the freedom fighters of India. You almost remember, I want everybody to watch that. I will share that link with this platform, and I want everybody to watch it. If that is the understanding of Kashmir Jihad in the people who are the helm of affairs, you can imagine why Kashmir continues to bleed in India. And I tell you, as on this state, you talked about digital jihad. It's a Kashmir Jihad, like jihads everywhere else in the world, have evolved into a hybrid war. And in Kashmir today, the security grid is very tight. It's very, very tight. And that's why you have incidents of violence come down. But wherever they find a breach, they target you. Kashmir Hindu genocide continues to be there. Even infiltration bits are always happening there. Even they have the last assault on army in the south of Pir Punjab. These were Batan Durian, and before that in Rajouri sector, they were like acts of war. So wherever they find a breach, they target you. But on our own, although the level of violence has come down statistically, but is it possible for us to sustain this kind of security grid perpetually? So what do we do? One thing we have to understand, jihad conflicts, jihad wars cannot be eradicated as on this date. You can only contain it. You can only contain it until there are reforms within within Islam. I see a kind of, I may be very optimistic about it. I don't know why I am. I see a ray of hope in Muhammad Salman in Saudi Arabia. And if it has to, reforms have to come, and they have to come from Saudi Arabia. I see that hope in him. I hope that happens. Till then, we have to live with it. But carrot and stick policy towards jihad will not do. First of all, ecosystem has to be targeted. I call in Jammu Kashmir, for example, we are talking about Kashmir ecosystem. What enables Kashmir jihad to flourish in Kashmir is the mainstream polity of that place. My election commission acknowledges the People's Democratic Party as a mainstream party, while as the agenda of PDP is self-rule. On top of that agenda is the mechanism of joint control of Pakistan and India over Jammu, Kashmir and Ladakh. Can you imagine? A so-called mainstream political party of India is espousing the cause of an enemy nation to rule over a part of India, jointly with the Indian state. And we call that party a mainstream party. The sitting member of parliament of National Conference in present Lok Sabha from Baramulla, who has been one of the principal pleaders in restoration of Article 370 for whom Kapil Sibal fighting the case in the Supreme Court of India. Akbar Lone is the sitting member of parliament from Baramulla. He raises a slogan, Pakistan Zindabad, in live Jammu and Kashmir Assembly. And when reporters ask him outside the assembly, why did you do it? He says, "Main Musalman hu, bahuk ho gaya. I am Muslim, I became emotional." So when I say this is so-called mainstream political party of Kashmir National Conference, and when I say Pakistan said, Rishta kya la ilaha illallah. Have you ever heard of National Conference of PDP? Forget about Hurriyat. Hurriyat has been self-acclaimed stooge of Pakistan operating on the soil of India. But what about these mainstream parties? Have you ever heard of a word of condemnation against Pakistan? No. Every time they find an opportunity, they want India to speak to Pakistan on Kashmir. Why? This is a way because they are operating as stooges of Pakistan in India, goading India to bend on Kashmir. Things have changed now. This after 5th August 2019. Also, I think I'm exceeding the time, but let me also talk about 5th August 2019. It was an historical day. Narendra Modi, my prime minister, showed that political spine, and he got this obnoxious piece of constitutional arrangement called Article 370 neutralized. This is what led to Kashmir Jihad in the contemporary sense. But what began on that day was the beginning of a process of dismantling of that Islamo-fascistic ecosystem that was flourishing in Kashmir by virtue of this very Article 370. And this is at least 70 years old disease in the contemporary sense. It will take time to dismantle it. But to claim, which I think was wrong on, it may be correct in political sense, but strategically it was wrong to claim that Kashmir Jihad will come to an end only because we have removed Article 370. These are two different things. Kashmir Jihad is a military problem. It has to be tackled militarily, and until and unless we take this Jihad war theater across LOC and make Pakistan bleed the way it has been, I don't think we can ever claim that we're free from Kashmir Jihad. And also, since the ambassador of Israel has spoken on this forum, I just want to remember this. When Kashmir Jihad, Kashmir Files was shown in the International Film Festival in Goa, one of the panelists, one of the principal panelists was a Israeli filmmaker who called Kashmir Files a propaganda film and a vulgar film. And I don't know where today he is. And I only hope and pray he wouldn't describe what Hamas inflicted on Israelis on 7th October. He doesn't call it a vulgar propaganda. And what Israel is suffering, what the world has been suffering, is India has been the worst victim of it. We have to be very cautious, all the more after 7th of October, because 7th of October emboldens Islamic forces, Islamist forces everywhere in the world. And India, you have seen mainstream political parties on television channels. Not one, I repeat, not one so-called spokesperson of Muslim community on national channels or any platform has condemned Hamas. They called it a freedom fighters group. And that's very unfortunate, and it's very dangerous. And I think we need to take cognizance of it. All across India, you have heard a Muslim League march in Kerala. The guy, a small kid sitting on the shoulders of his father or whoever he was, saying that, asking Hindus and Christians to make preparations for their last rituals. This was that guy. And the Razakar Party's assembly member in Hyderabad, he is asking for given freedom for 15 minutes from the police, and he would show Hindus what he will do. This is India, and I think we need to be very, very careful about it. And we should encourage Israel to take this war against Hamas to logical conclusion. And India has made its position very clear. We stand by two-state solution for Israel, but at the same for Middle East. At the same time, and also to remind to everybody else, in only once Indian Prime Minister has visited Palestine, that is Narendra Modi. So stop being calling it Narendra Modi's initiative, or maybe his take on 7th October, a Hindu-Wadi take. So Hamas has to be defeated. Not that Hamas, with defeat of Hamas, the jihad against Jews and Israel will come to an end. But yes, you will be sending a message that jihad can be fought. And I think they are doing it. But at the same time, we have to be very careful. Kashmir Jihad has not only about Kashmir, we have dozens of Kashmir on the verge of erupting in the rest of India. Kerala jihadists have fought, you must be knowing in general, sir, they have fought in Kashmir. They have two of Malayali jihadists were killed in Kashmir combating Indian security forces way back in 2007. And there is a very infamous case in Kerala High Court called Kashmir recruitment conspiracy case. I want everybody to read. It's about the involvement of Kerala jihadists who have been fighting Indian forces in Kerala, in Kashmir, and also about Rohingyas. There's a case about Chota Burmi, a Rohingya who was killed in Kashmir along with the local jihadi combating Indian forces in Kashmir. Kashmir is a test case for India. We have to contain it there before it spreads its tentacles in its own form, the rest of India. We have to be very, very careful. And India is sitting on a sitting duck, is sitting on a ticking bomb. What post 7 October developments in the rest of India show. Everybody and also this left liberals in the Indian country is a very toxic cocktail of Islamists and left liberals across the world, and India is again the worst victim of it. And reminder to leftists and communists who tend to come in the support of Islamists everywhere. Najibullah was a communist president of Afghanistan, and when he realized he cannot vanquish the Jihad, Mujahideen were fighting the civil war there against him, and he was the one who called who officially denounced communism and named Afghanistan as Islamic Republic of Afghanistan, changed its constitution to Islamic constitution, and then yet he wasn't spared. He took refuge in UN headquarters in Kabul, and when Taliban took over Kabul in the 90s, they dragged him out of the UN compound, and he was butchery murdered, and his corpse remained hanging on the electrical cable in the street of Kabul for days together. And I think we all should remember this. Even in Iran revolution against King Shah was basically organized, and they have been working on the communists of Iran. And it's the Khomeini Muslims only came later on. And when Khomeinis took over Iran, and today there's not a single communist left in Iran. There's not a single red flag left in Iran there, because all communists were targeted by the very Islamic. So even in India also, we need to understand the Islamist theory is about supremacy and exclusivity of Islam, and we have to be very, very careful about it. And also, don't forget, don't be misguided by Iran's support to Hamas. It's the only place, Gaza Strip is the only place in the world where Shia Iran and Sunni Hamas are fighting together, because their common goal is annihilation of Jews and Israel. That's the only reason they are together. Otherwise, the longest ongoing war in the world is between Shias and Sunnis in the world. Syria was destroyed by this war. Yemen is same war. So I don't see any way the Ummah, which Hamas is calling all the time to come to their rescue, coming together in, as on today, I can see that no Wahhabi country is going to join the war in against Israel and Middle East. Not even Iran will tend to do it, although it will continue to use its proxies, Hezbollah and Houthis from Yemen against Israel. Nobody is going to join the war, because from the inner core, the Saudi Arabia, UAE, and even Qatar, they are wary of these Islamists themselves. They want Hamas to be defeated. And on the platform, because they have to take care of the local population, Islamist sentiments, they are trying to speak against Israel. And I think Israel has got a very short window to continue to its operations. Very soon they should be able to reach to a particular conclusion, and the civilized world should all support them, because it's, again, I say, a civilization war, but India has been a worst victim of it, and we have to speak openly about it for every platform.
Okay, thank you, Lal sir. It was wonderful listening to you once again. And a few important points which you have raised, I would like to highlight for our listeners here. A very important point you brought about, there are certain elements in our own country who are propagating the two-nation theory, where the Hindus and the Muslims form their separate nation. This is a dangerous trend, and it has to be nipped in the bud. You spoke about Article 370, and where you had the separate rules earlier for a separate kind of people. Again, a notional two-state kind of an approach, which has also been uh, taken care of by the present government. You spoke about Kashmiri Jihad. Uh, I have had three tenures in Jammu and Kashmir, and I can tell you that you are spot on. Uh, there is no one, no sensible person who can contest this claim of yours. There is Kashmir Jihad, and we need to contain it. You are absolutely right in your assessment that it cannot be eliminated. It can only be contained. And because there are large number of forces which are playing the role, and the most important is the involvement of states, state-sponsored terrorism, because unless countries like Pakistan, Iran, Turkey, and all these countries, they realize that spreading terrorism is not the kind of governance, I think things won't improve. You spoke about the Israeli filmmaker having these kind of sentiments. Let me assure you, sir, the Israeli population is not, they don't think like him. And we have a similar mindset as far as the Israel is concerned, and India is concerned, because we are both the victims of the same kind of a terror. So we can understand the pain of each other, which I think the ambassador also brought out. And you touched upon states other than Jammu and Kashmir also. You spoke about Kerala. You spoke what is happening there. You spoke in Hyderabad, in Telangana, what is happening there. They are a large number of states, and it is extremely important to curb this tendency of spread of these movements which are mushrooming within our country. And lastly, you spoke about Shia and Sunnis, about the Hamas. You are absolutely correct in your assessment that Shia and Sunnis, if they have a common cause, they will come together. But it's only a temporary shaking of hands, because later on, again, they'll be at each other's throat. Thank you very much for this very incisive commentary which you have given us. This gives me an opportunity to invite our next speaker, uh, Dr. Anshuman Behra. And Dr. Anshuman Behra, I have known him. He's going to speak on the jihadi trends in Bangladesh, and also on the national register of citizens, because it's a very contentious issue as far as the Northeast was concerned. Uh, Dr. Behra is an associate professor in conflict resolution and peace research program at NIAS. He is a trained political scientist. He has worked with the Institute of Defense Studies and Analysis, in which I'm also a member. He's been in the Institute of Conflict Management, New Delhi. His main areas of research are in the field of political violence and internal conflicts in India. I've also read his article in IDSA on SIMI and PFI, in which a progressive approach he has actually brought out. Nepal, Bangladesh, democracy and governance in India, political theory and social impacts of development. He has been writing very frequently on this. Apart from this, he has also done extensive work on Mao insurgency in India and militancy in South Asia. Dr. Behra is he teaches courses on theoretical constructs of understanding the conflict, qualitative research, and whenever one has to listen to him, he is very incisive in his words. He is absolutely forthright, and we all are looking forward to listening to him. And over to you, sir. The stage is yours.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, you can be heard now.
Okay. Can you see my screen? If I can ask you?
Yes, yes, yes. We can
Okay.
see the screens.
Nice. Uh, Good afternoon, everybody, and Major General. Very nice seeing you, sir. And my previous speaker has actually set the tone for the discussion today. So what I'll do is, I have been asked by Mr. Esas to speak on Bangladesh. I must confess that, and I must actually not confess, I must actually say that for a long time, I was actually looking for a platform, but though I sort of, work on Bangladesh, I track Bangladesh developments very, very closely, starting from 2010. Uh, I was actually very interested to sort of, discuss some of these ideas, some of these developments in Bangladesh, what is happening, especially after there is a revocation of ban on Jamaat-e-Islami Bangladesh. This ban was imposed on the Jamaat-e-Islami Bangladesh on 2013, August 1st, that it would not contest for any election in Bangladesh. Okay. So now in June, what we saw, there was a massive rally in the streets of Dhaka, in Rajshahi, in Cox's Bazar, all these areas where the Jamaat-e-Islami Bangladesh actually held its first political rally, what they say, after maybe 10 good years, right? So what implication it has on the already a radicalized society? I would not call a country, because that's only the political component of it. One has to understand jihad and radicalism. One has to also understand the social sources of this radicalization. It's not merely a political agenda. This is also a way of life of a particular community, right? So that said, what I'll do is I'll just take you through how do I so what I have titled this presentation is Jihadist Militants in Bangladesh, Implications on India. And could you please go to the next slide? The structure of the presentation, the major themes that I'll be actually discussing with you people here is, one, I'll just put the Bangladeshi jihadist militancy in a context. Okay, then I'll just take you through the genesis of this jihadi militancy in Bangladesh. Then I have actually, what I've done is, like, I have actually limited this thing starting from 2009, because 2009 is a watershed moment in the Bangladesh political kind of development. From there, I'll just take you through how there was a lull in the form of the activities of the militant groups, but how they have regrouped and sort of capitalized the inaction of the actions of the Sheikh Hasina government, and how they regrouped and researched again. Okay, then I'll just take you through the major jihadi groups in Bangladesh, what the cyber aspect the chair was actually mentioning, and the previous speaker was also hinted upon a bit. There also, I'll just tell you how Ansarul Islam Bangladesh is one group that is actually taking advantage of the cyberspace, and how it is radicalizing the young and the youth in Bangladesh. Then the last slide and the last point we'll discuss about the implications on India. Okay, that is where I'll come. What is the transnational kind of connection of Jamaat-e-Islami Bangladesh and the Jamaat-e-Islami Hind here? Then the PFI thing was also mentioned. I'll just elaborate a bit, and I know that there is a speaker, Vicky is there, who will be talking about the PFI and the CINI and all that. Okay, next slide, please. Talking about Bangladesh, my interest with Bangladesh started from 2009-10, when I joined Institute for Conflict Management, and my director, Mr. Ajay Sahani, who actually asked me to go and meet Mr. Hiranmay Karlekar. Okay, and in a way, you can say that he's my guru, making me understand what Bangladesh is from the radical Islam and the militancy point of view, right? So the seminal book that Hiranmay sir has actually come up with, okay, those days, it's called Bangladesh, the next Afghanistan. Okay, let me start my presentation around keeping Afghanistan, okay, not as a coincidence, but as a major focal point of my presentation and its connection with Bangladesh. If you remember, the very ostensible kind of participation of Bangladesh Mujahidins, okay, the Bangladeshi Mujahidins in the larger transnational jihad, what they say, was the beginning point of the when they joined Afghanistan for the so-called anti-Soviet campaign, right? The so-called anti-Soviet campaign kind of a thing. And Bangladesh, more than more than India, some 3,000 Bangladeshis directly. These are reported. 3,000 Bangladeshis actually went to Afghanistan and fought alongside Al Qaeda, Taliban, and all sorts of forces, Islamic forces there. And that was the beginning of transnational kind of jihad in Bangladesh. But not to say that this was the root. The root of Bangladesh jihad, it can go back to the partition of Bengal 1905. That was the time when the Muslim League was formed. That was the time a lot of things, the two-nation theory was getting kind of, very popular. And that was the time a lot of kind of, Islamic schools were getting assertive in India. Okay, and the root of Bangladesh jihad, the sentiment jihad kind of indoctrination actually goes there. But then, keeping Afghanistan as one of the focal points, you remember in 2000, in 1980s, when the Bangladeshi Mujahidins went there, to a point when the Taliban has actually taken over Afghanistan, what has happened in Bangladesh? Okay, that is why, just to provoke your mind, to ring a bell in your mind. So I just put the Afghanistan coincidence. We are discussing at a time when the jihadi Islam in South Asia, in that larger context. Let's see what is happening in our surrounding. In our surrounding, back home here, we have like the Popular Front of India. Okay, after the banning of the Popular Front of India, I can tell you with authority that I was one of the victims of the Popular Front of India when I wrote in 2010 a piece in the IDSA. They had the audacity to get into the buildings of the IDS and threaten me. Okay, the presently who are arrested, Rahiman and this so-called Professor Koya and all these people, they went inside my kind of cabin in IDS. I was a research associate at that time, and they threatened me, but that didn't stop me. So I wrote as a full-fledged. I was the first one to call them a militant group way back in 2014. You can read this in my book on militant groups in South Asia, right? So that is back home. Okay, we thought, okay, the Indian Mujahideen is over the after the arrest of Yasin Bhatkal, but then we see and we witness the new forms of terrorism that has actually emerged in India in the names of riots. Okay, starting from Delhi to the Hijab Rao in Karnataka. I'm here in Karnataka in Bangalore, to the coastal towns of Karnataka, then in Kerala, then in parts of Darbhanga and UP, you name the place, the farmer agitation, the so-called farmer agitation and all that, right? In Pakistan, what we are witnessing that is the government, the civilian government has been defunct. The army is actually looking very vulnerable. Okay, we are seeing how the Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan, the TTP, is actually controlling the kind of, it is actually attacking the Pakistani security forces left, right, and center. Okay, the vulnerability, the helplessness of the Pakistani security forces has been exposed so pathetically like never before. Afghanistan is everybody's kind of knowledge. We know what has happened in Afghanistan. Okay, at the same time, the fundamentalist forces have actually come back to power in Maldives. Okay, then we have a situation in Bangladesh. Bangladesh, under a secular government of Awami League, a lot of these jihadi militancy kind of activities have gone overlooked, or they have not actually caught the attention of the scholars and the policymakers. Okay, that is where I think, to put the Bangladesh into context, we should also know that how it actually operates, how it actually interacts with the activities of radical jihadi militancy elsewhere in the subcontinent, right? So the foundation of Islamic radicalization in Bangladesh, one can actually go back to the role of Jamaat-e-Islami killing millions of people, okay, during the liberation war. Okay, this was nothing but asserting the supremacy of one form of Islam, right? And then what we have seen, starting from the formation of Bangladesh, and there are the domination of two parties, and this extremely polarized in and around secularism versus radical Islam. Okay, and the role of Jamaat-e-Islam Bangladesh has been very, very substantial in polarizing the politics in Bangladesh. In that process, what we have also witnessed, that the youth of Bangladesh, starting from the cricket team to many other kind of things, that you cannot with authority say that they have been immune to some sort of radicalization or the other. What we have seen in 2009, the Pilkhana mutiny, the BDR mutiny, what we say, that there was a serious kind of a concern by the Bangladeshi government that the security forces has been actually radicalized like never before. Okay, and that was the time there was a plot to kill Sheikh Hasina. Okay, somehow she survived. Okay, that was his her kind of cleverness or the farsightedness. She sort of survived. But then that actually forced the Bangladesh government to actually force resign some 300, 400 kind of security officers. Okay, but then when it comes to the implications of India, one thing that is a very supremacist Islamic kind of tone of all these jihadi thing that is very, very natural. That requires a no-brainer. But if you read it very carefully, their documents, okay, there is a rabid anti-India agenda that it's very much it's an inhabitable part of these groups. Okay, kindly see my book on militant groups in South Asia. There, the HUGB and the JMB, I have written their objectives, quoting directly from their kind of documents. You will see that they say that they want to establish a caliphate, they want to establish a ummah, but at the same time, the very next sentence would be that you need to also target the Hindu India. Okay, that is why all these groups, if you see, now starting from HUGB and the JMB, JI, okay, these three, especially these three kind of groups, their major target always been the Bangladeshi Hindus. Okay, I'll come to that. Okay, 2013 and 2016, what happened? Next slide, please. So what is the genesis? The genesis is undoubtedly the fountain source of Islamic extremism is Jamaat-e-Islam. I'll not get into that, the role of Maududi, political Islam, Hakimi and all those things. That is a discussion of another kind of thing. The Jamaat-e-Islami Bangladesh, after it actually became an independent state in 1971, the Jamaat-e-Islami Bangladesh became the undisputable kind of father figure, fountainhead of the Islamic extremism in Bangladesh. And it proved its kind of undisputable kind of role, the kind of massacre it was involved in during the Liberation War. Lots of people later killed. And people say the Motiur Rahman Nizami, okay, Said Delwar Hussain, or Abdul Qadir Mullah. These are the kind of figures, they were recognized by the number of people they killed. And the number was not in hundreds, the number was in thousands. The number actually went to lakhs. Okay, and when our visit to Dhaka, some of the friends would say that, okay, this is a well where there is the chair is and there are some thousands of dead bodies are dumped. Okay, and they would take pride. And that is the background in which Jamaat-e-Islami actually emerged as the fountain source of Islamic extremism, Islamic jihadi militancy kind of thing in Bangladesh. And then, as I told you, the anti-Soviet campaign in Afghanistan, and then the return of this Mujahideen. Okay, when they came back in 1991, after the withdrawal of Soviet forces from Afghanistan, then what you saw is the formation of HUGB, HUGB Bangladesh, 1992. And Bangladesh here is talking only about the establishment of a Ummah, Islamic Brotherhood kind of thing, and very much linked to the political Islam ideology of Maulana Maududi. Okay, and a lot of people are confused that, okay, this is a Deobandi group, this is a Al-Hadid group kind of thing, but undisputably they are following the teachings of Maududi. Then come 1998, you have the emergence of one of the most deadly kind of a jihadi group in Bangladesh, that was Jamaatul Mujahideen Bangladesh, and it has a super military wing called the JMJB. And that was the time the northeastern part of Bangladesh, which was actually infected by some radical communism. The previous speaker was actually mentioning, this is a very, very, very interesting point the communists should actually understand. The Ganapose, the Bangladesh Communist Party, the Purba Banglar Communist Party, and all these things, where the JMGB was actually given a task by the Khalida Zia government, and there's a alliance government between JI and BNP, that to get rid of the communist radicals. And the JMGB was on the task, and they finished off the Purba Banglar Communist Party, the Bangladesh Communist Party, and the Ganapoj. And they would selectively kill them. And as they finish, then you will see the JMGB actually, the entire platform going to a kind of dormancy. Okay, but the JMGB, the Jamatul Mujahideen in Bangladesh, is one of those kind of terrorist groups in Bangladesh where it has a role to establish Islam, the Sharia law and all those things, but at the same time, they have a serious wing that work on the around the anti-India kind of an agenda. Okay, they are the ones who actually work in the border areas of India-Bangladesh border. The enclaves, remember in the enclaves, the kind of atrocities these guys actually, committed with the enclave dwellers before the land boundary agreement was signed between India and Bangladesh. Okay, Sheikh Hasina and Manmohan Singh. All right. Then another movement that comes in Bangladesh was the Awami League coming back to power in 2009. And this is that the time Sheikh Hasina comes all powerful and with ultimate kind of majority, and Bangladesh, the well-meaning people who are actually looking at some change. But all of a sudden, you actually see there was a mutiny. And the mutiny was by the Bangladesh Rifles. Okay, this is the border guarding force of Bangladesh. Right. And what was the mutiny about? The mutiny about is like, Sheikh Hasina is secular and Sheikh Hasina has to be killed the way they killed her father, Sheikh Mujib. And they need to actually bring back Khalida Zia and other Islamist forces to power. Right. And it was actually colored in such a way that this is the security forces are not happy with the government. This is where Hiranmay Karlekar comes very handy. I'll suggest you to sort of, read him, the way he captured the movement, no other Indian scholars have been able to actually capture. The BDR mutiny actually highlighted the deep-rooted extremist kind of an indoctrination, Islamist indoctrination, even within the security forces. We are talking about how the Pakistan army is all about the representation of Islamic fundamentalism. But the Bangladeshi security forces, for the first time through the BDR mutiny, exposed itself as one of the most radicalized extremist kind of forces. And now, though you are following Bangladesh, you will also see how the Bangladesh border, the Bangladesh border guards actually politicize the entire thing and say that the BSF, the Border Security Force of India, is necessarily a Hindu force. Okay, and some radical organizations like the Hizbut Tahrir, that's a transnational kind of a thing, they also sort of supported it and highlighted thing. There was a killing of a particular girl when she was trying to cross over to India illegally. That is the movement. Then the Iron Lady, Sheikh Hasina taking the war criminal kind of trials of beginning and all these kind of peoples I named just before, Motiur Rahman Nizami, Syed Delwar Hussain was actually sentenced to death. And that also is a defining movement of, resurgence of radical elements in Bangladesh. For a time, we all thought that they are going dormant. They have been actually been tackled well. Okay, that was the time in 2012-13, I had written Islamist vestiges in Bangladesh. They went and they became silent for some time, but then they actually came up. 2013, just before the banning of the Jamaat-e-Islami, you see how many Hindu Bangladeshi houses were torched, how many, some 80 temples were vandalized on a single day. And then you have the Sahabaga movement, the Hifazat-e-Islami kind of movement. Then came the Rohingya issue. The Rohingya issue is something that is very interesting to sort of discuss for a minute. And this was the time there was a kind of propaganda against the Sheikh Hasina that she is necessarily, or she was necessarily anti-Islam, right? In order to prove her Islamic credentials, she actually allowed some 10 lakh, 15 lakh kind of Rohingyas coming and settling down, right? But then the Rohingya solidarity organizations, then the Arakan Rohingya Salvation Army. Okay, once you are a radical, you are always a radical, right? However vulnerable you are. Okay, you look at the Rohingyas, the way they behave in India. So this worked as a multi-edged sword against the Sheikh Hasina government and for the Islamist. Okay, so they actually recruited a lot from the Rohingya youth. At the same time, they also posed a kind of thing as a threat, destabilizing, putting the Sheikh Hasina government into a fix that they are not able to take care of the local administrations in Bangladesh. Next slide, please. Okay, so let me now come. Okay, this is the brief kind of history, but I am not doing justice because the time is less. Okay,
Dr. Mehra,
yeah.
Can I also request you to cover the PFI and SIMI?
I'm coming to that.
Because that speaker is he is not attending today, so
Yeah.
We would like you to cover that also.
Yeah, cover, like I'll just touch it upon briefly because 2:45 I have another.
Yes,
major. Okay.
Kindly do touch upon it.
Yeah, very quickly. Okay, what are the major jihadi groups in Bangladesh? The JMB is something that I'll say that is the most dreaded one. Okay, but at the same time, there's one particular group I am to draw your attention. That is Ansarul Islam. Okay, earlier it was called Ansarul Bangladesh, but then you see there is also a jihadist tone when they change Ansarul Islam to Ansarul Bangladesh to Ansarul Islam. Okay, so that is where you see it began as an online group, urban-based, online group, and the only task was that during 2012, 2011 especially, there was a proliferation of bloggers in Bangladesh. Yeah, these bloggers used to actually raise some very liberal kind of topics, talking about literature, modernity, talking about smoking around, drinking, all those kind of things. A bit of very liberal, open culture kind of thing. Then also asking about questioning the radical Islam. Okay, and that was the time this particular Ansarul Bangladesh actually emerges, and it actually issues threats to these secular liberal bloggers and intellectuals. Starting from Dhaka University, Rajshahi University, they would go and target them. And in that process, they have also killed a lot of foreigners who used to visit. Okay, and they used to write in favor of Sheikh Hasina. This is the group which would actually issue them threatenings. Okay, and this group has become so big now, okay, that the 2016 Cafe Blast, if you remember, if your mind serves you well, your memory, this is the group which actually radicalized. Of course, the Zakir Naik and all those teachings are there, the foundation. But this is the particular group actually, ignited, provoked those young, and those young minds are not coming from this theory that poverty leads to violence, poverty leads to terrorism. This has been debunked by a lot of people. I also don't believe in that. Okay, some of the ministers' sons, some MLA sons are actually, involved. Politicians' sons are actually, coming from very high-fi family. Guitar playing, smoking ganja, those kind of people coming there, right? So this is the group now in Bangladesh. If you see Ansarul Islam, actually is the role model, hi-fi culture kind of, very modern jihadist group, I can say. Okay, they sound very contradictory, but I'll call the modern jihadist group because they're tax savvy. The cyber point the chair actually mentioned. Okay, they use the cyberspace to radicalize the people and the target, and they have a wonderful connection with the Hizb ut-Tahrir. Okay, then we come to the JMB. Following the crackdown on the militant groups in Bangladesh, we actually saw the JMB was a run. A lot of JMB militants were arrested, and some of them were sentenced, some were executed. But you will also remember that most of them actually ran to Indian side, the open border. Okay, and you will remember by 2013-14 we had the cases coming from West Bengal where the JMB guys were making bombs and it actually blasted. And those reports are also kind of there to your memory. Okay, that was the time India was a safe haven for the JMB. Okay, and I do not want to name the forces who actually supported them in India. You all know that. Okay, in the name of the poor Bangladeshi immigrants, right? We'll come to that. Okay, then now what we are seeing, a cocktail of Ansarul Islam and JMB has emerged as Neo JMB or the ISIS in Bangladesh chapter. Okay, this is a very interesting group. Okay, 2016, for the first time, I was talking to some of the military people in Bangladesh. They would actually highlight that this neo JMB has been a buzzword. And what is this neo JMB? It has its root in the post-2016 Dhaka terror incident, and it talks about the Islamic State of Bangladesh. Islamic State of Bangladesh, it talks about, right? So when Salahuddin, the Amir, the chief of JMB, was asked a question that how would you respond to this new thing, he sort of he said, no, it doesn't make any sense. But he was very profoundly acknowledging that our cadres will be very proudly have joined ISIS. 2018, 2019, a lot of this encrypted kind of messages the JMB were actually getting from ISIS in Syria. There's Bangladeshi fighters who are there, Mujahideen who are there. The Bangladeshi intelligence was finding it difficult to decode them, right? But then we come to the fountain source of the Islamic Jihad radicalization in Bangladesh. Undoubtedly, it is the Jamaat-e-Islami Bangladesh. Right, the role it has a prominent role. Okay, starting from the rickshaw pullers in Dhaka city to the students of Dhaka University. It is symbolically, I'm telling. Okay, where there was a time when they are banned in August 2013. Okay, you should have seen the site in Dhaka city. How the the so-called poor rickshaw pullers actually agitated, because the economy of Dhaka city is actually controlled by Jamaat-e-Islami Bangladesh. The private universities are actually controlled by Jamaat-e-Islami Bangladesh. You name any city, any town in Bangladesh, you will see that the kind of madrasas, okay, the faithful education, there is this book. I request all of you to kindly go through that book. Okay, Riaz Ahmad's book. Okay, that is where you'll see how Jamaat-e-Islam actually has penetrated into the minds of the youth there. Okay, its role in war crimes during the Liberation War, the trials. And now what is interesting is that it was banned in 2013, and now Sheikh Hasina government is under tremendous pressure, and accordingly they have actually revoked the ban. And the first rally was actually held in June, July, 2023. This has, and Bangladesh is going to election this December. Yeah, what will be the fate of Sheikh Hasina? Sheikh Hasina is there for last 15 years. There is it is an anti-incumbency. There is a lot of kind of thing. Bangladesh is not post-COVID. It is not doing well economically, right? Another economic boom that we discussed maybe 3-4 years before. Bangladesh is no longer the same. So if at all, and the Americans have also shown some displeasure with Sheikh Hasina. That is the reason a lot of scholars from Bangladesh actually claim that was the reason why Sheikh Hasina actually revoked the ban on the Jamaat-e-Islami. And Jamaat-e-Islami, given their kind of power in terms of their social base in Bangladesh, if they come to power along with the BNP, you know the story. You don't need me to tell how radical Bangladesh is going to be. Okay, and Hiranmoy Kalekar will sound prophetic that time that it is going to be the next Afghanistan, if not completely the way the Taliban is that, but you will see some sparks of Afghani culture, the Taliban culture there, right? So can you go to the next slide? Okay, and this is this I had kept it open. Okay, the implications. Let me tell you, the young scholars who are here. Okay, you should not be confused that the Jamaat-e-Islami Bangladesh and the Jamaat-e-Islami Hind, okay, there is any difference between these two. Yeah, we should not be confused. And Jamaat-e-Islami Hind has actually played a very subtle way. Okay, if I tell you that PFI is basically a Jamaat-e-Islami Hind organization, how many of you will be surprised? The young people who have not actually followed them, you will be surprised. But you check the Popular Front of India's kind of registration and all that, you will find it is registered in Delhi, okay, under the name of Jamaat-e-Islami Hind. It is basically a Jamaat-e-Islami Hind kind of organization. So the Islamic Chhatra Shibir, okay, that was the student organization, or that is the student organization of Jamaat-e-Islami Bangladesh, and they are linked with SIMI and the student Islamic kind of organization. That is another student wing of the predecessor or the earlier version of SIMI. Yeah. You will see that the Islamic Chhatra Shibir, that is the student organization, student front of the Bangladeshi chapter of Jamaat-e-Islami, and our SIMI and SIO, there is a strong link. Okay, and the activities of these three are almost the same. Now the PFI, if you have the kind of things happening in Pakistan, you have in Afghanistan. Now you see, if at all Jamaat-e-Islami Bangladesh comes to power, we have banned the PFI. But as the previous speaker was mentioning, okay, banning doesn't actually keep them away from politics, right? And it doesn't keep them away. SDPI, their political wing, that is still a registered political party in India. That is the irony. It's laughable. Okay, we have not been able to ban them. Because our democratic kind of thing doesn't allow them. I do not know what are the other compulsions. But then, okay, you say in one hand the PFI is banned. Of course, you have arrested 200, 300 of them. But then what about their other cadres? Okay, and they are actually operating in different names. I had given a list to a lot of scholars. Okay, in my book also you can read. I have also written in WARF. Kindly go back and read this thing. Okay, only a ban will not, help in any manner. Okay, now how powerful they will be if Jamaat-e-Islami actually comes back to power. Okay, then the infiltration. Have we been being able to check the infiltration from Bangladesh? I just came from Assam. I was there for 15, 20 days. There are certain districts in Assam where the demography has changed, like, you will not imagine to what extent it has changed. Okay, places like Morigaon and all that, where, the 80% of the population have become Bangladeshi immigrants, forget about Muslims. Okay, for the first time, we are getting reports from Assam where the Assami Muslims have started fighting with the Bangladeshi Muslims. Okay, and that has become the kind of thing. Then, if this thing actually something goes wrong with Sheikh Hasina, because Sheikh Hasina is also facing a serious corruption charges, right? And something goes wrong with Sheikh Hasina, Jamaat-e-Islami comes to power, and JMB actually start working. Okay, at the very, very openly, the way it was working before 2009, and the infiltration story and what kind of security implications will have. So as I said, I actually written to me another title that I saw the final this thing. Does NRC offer a solution? No. The NRC doesn't. The first thing is that we do not have a consensus around NRC. We as Indians, forget about the party politics. We as Indians, we have not been able to come to a consensus to think that the Bangladeshi illegal immigrants are a threat to the nation. It's not a threat to a particular political party. The political parties who are speaking in favor of these kind of people who have come and changed our demographic like never before, once they become consolidated, they actually hold their ground, they will be the ones first bite them. They don't realize all these things. The Germans, you ask the Poland people, ask the Germany. I was in Germany. The so-called refugees. The Islam after the Syria war and all that, when they came to Germany and they opened the door with opened arms, they come. Okay, and now the refugees everywhere, it is Islam is our right. Even if you are a refugee, you will have to sort of protect that. Okay, what will happen to that? Okay, so the NRC could actually, when you see, I don't think, first the thing is, in order to have a kind of meaningful NRC, there has to be a lot of kind of homework. There has to be a lot of kind of a consensus building exercise by the ruling regime and the opposition. You can have your fightings on things, caste line and all those things are fine. But on these issues, for heaven's sake, if you do not have a consensus, if you think that you will implement an NRC, how would you implement an NRC if you do not have a consensus? Even if you implement an NRC, what happened in Assam? The judiciary took the kind of responsibility of implementing NRC. Then what happened? They miserably failed. People didn't go. Okay, there are so many problems in the execution of that NRC that it made a mockery of itself. Right. But then, to come back to the topic, I do not have sufficient answer as on the NRC issue, but these are my limited points. But then, as the developments are actually unfolding in Bangladesh, it is going unnoticed. Unnoticed to the extent we think that there is a secular government and all that. The secular government is actually second out. The secular government is not able to protect its secular credentials anymore. It is also behaving to prove itself are more Islamic than the Islamic forces. In that condition, okay, any sort kind of jihadi kind of militancy problem in or development in Bangladesh will have serious implications on to the security aspects of India. I thank you for your kind of opportunity to speak. If I have actually not been able to cover some of the things, it's because only for the shortage of time. Maybe some other time we'll actually sit together and discuss this thing. And thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Dr. Anshuman Behra. I think I have not heard a better talk in my entire these years in which I have been looking at the national security on the Bangladesh factor. Today in Assam, in actually India, we have more than 15 million Bangladesh immigrants inside our own country. And
15 million, you say, sir?
yeah.
Sir, you are very conservative.
No.
You are very conservative.
Okay, it would be more than that.
Yeah.
So, in Assam itself, the population of Assam has become a minority because they have all been mixed, and Bangladesh government is not willing to take them back as their own citizens. So it's a major, major problem. You have covered it so beautifully. You have talked about Jamaat-e-Islami. You have talked about GNB. You have talked about how this movement Ansar Islam is picking up in Bangladesh, how the liberal groups are being targeted, how the killings are taking place, how strong this jihadi element of Bangladesh is taking shape. And in times to come, I think if we in the Indian government do not start waking up to this reality, I think it will be too late. So it's important. The border mechanisms have to be put into place. And also you talked about the NRC, because NRC cannot be a solution to all these problems. There's something much more than NRC has to come about. But rightly said, there has to be a consensus. And within our own country, when there is no consensus on this very big problem, and you have made a very big statement, and I want this forum to highlight this statement in the entire nation that Bangladesh may be the next Afghanistan. It's a thing we have to really start looking. Today, we don't share a common border with Afghanistan, so we are quite buffered, I would say, by what is happening in Afghanistan, though the impact is still there. But what happens when you share a boundary with the country who is going to be the next Afghanistan, where if Jamaat-e-Islami comes to power, and what advantage China can take of the situation, because already China has made a deep inroads into Bangladesh. Bangladesh Prime Minister may speak differently today, but we all know that what kind of development work is being done by China in the Chittagong ports, and what defense mechanisms are being generated there in Bangladesh. So this is an area, especially the Northeast India, is of a very great concern, because we don't have only Bangladesh to deal with. We have Myanmar also, we have a Mizoram border there, and we all know what happened in Manipur. So you have raised certain very, very important issues, and I think we just can't be sitting on our chairs and only discussing it. Some action has to take place, and I'm sure that in whatever efforts I can do with my own people in the military or other places in the political sphere, I would also be highlighting this, and I would, Dr. Anshuman, I would like to remain in touch with you and to keep abreast of what all is happening around, so that we can keep everybody informed, and especially the research scholars. I want to beseech them. I want to tell them that please take this up as your research subject. Do something more on it. We must get more information coming out. Dr. Anshuman is leading light in this. You can take his support, and I'm sure that in times to come, we'll be able to combat this menace of jihad, which is spreading its tentacles all over us now. Thank you, Dr. Anshuman. I don't see any absolutely fine, because I know Dr. Nandan Kishore very well, but I think the audience also should know that he's an associate professor in the University of Pondicherry, and he's and he has written a large number of books and research papers. So we will straight on get on with Dr. Nandan Kishore's topic, which is again very interesting: the spawns of Wahhabism, Deobandi, Ahle Hadith, and the Bareli movement. And over to you, Dr. Nandan Kishore.
Thank you, Major General Rajan. Thank you, Yashas, Indic Research Forum, and all my co-panelists. It was a pleasure listening to all of you. Because of a bit of delay, and I have further commitments at the university, I also serve as a public relation officer. That's the reason I just have to catch up with a few other things. So never mind. Otherwise, directly plunging into in a limited time that we have, I am also aware that there is also another session that has to start at 3 p.m. I don't want to take away or eat away their time. Now, this is very, very important. A lot of us are not even aware in the context that there exists a greater threat with regard to the type of organizations that are existing. It might be because of an identity crisis or an ego that must have led to the creation of some of these groups, and they have their own differences, which are essentially that have stemmed. But at the end of the day, what they all operate to is apocalyptic idea of what they want to achieve at the end of the day across the world. And all of their end is the same, but their means and the way they want to approach a problem is different in a bit there here. That's because of the type of beliefs that they have had with their own jurisprudence to a few other things. Perhaps to all of these, the base comes in with the type of rule that they had in different places. Now, Wahhabi is a very clear understanding, because Deobandi, Barelvi, as well as what we call as the later creation, which is also called as the Al-Hadith. These three are much later creations compared to Wahhabism itself. Now, Wahhabism's idea comes from Al-Wahhab, who was from Saudi Arabia, and then someone who hailed from a family of jurisprudence. And then subsequently, he had this capacity to talk about things, because then Saudi Arabia, which was full of pagans, which was full of a lot of other things that existed, also had gone into a lot of superstition to many other things, in the sense tying of thread to a tree, wearing certain things, and thinking certain tomes are powerful. And then they're also thinking some individuals are powerful to relieve them, or individuals have capability to perform miracles, to many other things. It's precisely this component that Wahhab wanted to work like a reform movement to bring back the original component of Islam, which he thought was not a possibility with the current condition, or was not a possibility the way the people following Islam in his region and elsewhere had moved out. So first he thought that first he has to clean up his own people, and then he had to move into others. There is no meaning in going elsewhere rather than looking at his own people. So that's what led to those three major instances of stoning a woman to death, and cutting off a tree that was of great reverence, and then destroying the tombs. All these things were symbolic, and from him it started. Then we know the marriage between the Al-Sauds and the Wahhabs that happened, and then subsequently how the Al-Sauds appropriated Wahhabism for their own existence, and then they also wanted to, because if you look in to Al-Wahhab's reading, this is the subtle difference that we will find in modern day Saudi Arabia, when they call something as Wahhabism and then use Hanbali school of jurisprudence. Wahhab did not actually agree with any of these things. What Wahhab felt was that was a typical imitation of what they were, what essentially would they would call as taqlid. Now, taqlid is not accepted by the Wahhabis. Wahhabis are into ijtihad. Now, when I say taqlid, it simply means somebody has interpreted something, you follow that person, and you follow that person. It goes on like that. So they had very, very clearly, or Wahhab had made it very, very clear that at no point of time they would ever accept taqlid. They would rather go for ijtihad, because that would provide them greater answers. But the practitioners of Islam would simply say, but then how would you manage to bring in laws according to the country's requirement and other things? That's how the four schools of jurisprudence have come in, which has led to the creation of so many others, and so many countries are following different schools. And present day Saudi Arabia and others follow Hanbali, and then you see the Deoband that is in India following the Hanafi school, which is essentially the one which helps them to. Now, what is typical difference, if you ask me, between the Wahhabis, Deobandis, and the Barelvis that we are also talking about, apart from the Ali Hadith, is very simple, that the Wahhabis oppose the taqlid, as I said, whereas even that's the case with Al Hadith, they also oppose the taqlid, whereas the Deobandis and the Barelvis support the taqlid. Taqlid is, as I told you, the way looking at the conformity of one person to teaching of the other, and then they go on talking about it, because the ones who perform taqlid are called as the mukhalid. Now, in the contemporary usage, if you ask me, how does that work in the Islamic reformist movement and other things, the Wahhabis are very clear. Prophet was like anybody else, was just a chosen one, but was a human, and one should not attach too much value to that one. Whereas the Deobandis and the Barelvis, the Wahhabis and the Hadith, these two both basically believe in this concept, whereas the Deobandis and Barelvis somehow believe that Prophet was something extraordinary. On top of it, Barelvis go to the next level, because Barelvis are also the ones who are Sufis, or ones who believe in the ideology of the Sufis, and they almost see the Prophet as a light, which is also called as Noor, and they think that he is all pervasive, is there, and that's also a reason why over a period of time the Wahhabis or Al-Hadith and all these people have been opposing the way Barelvis are celebrating birthdays of some of the prophets, birthdays getting celebrated for months together and with pomp and show, not actually looking at reforms that are required, not actually looking at themselves and what they're trying to do. Now, in the sense, what has happened with the Wahhabi, the Al-Hadith group, is that they are very, very clear about the ones who have come in the later stage, whether one calls them as powerful people, miracle people, whatever that you want to call, they don't really honor them, and then they are against, absolutely against the worship of the tombs. And for them, again, one important other concept is, though all of them believe in one or the other way, is the idea of Tawheed. Tawheed is monotheism, and all of them would want to believe in that one. Whereas every sect within Islam, essentially that follows, or in one or the other form that exists in India, they agree on the idea of Tawheed, but you see the Barelvis essentially trying to go beyond, and they also seek help from the saints. They also seek help from others by considering them they're also very, very powerful, and they can actually be of great help to them. But that's not the case with many others. They have the different ways of looking at it. Now, if you look at, as I said, the Wahhabi movement or Wahhabism as such doesn't exist here. Wahhabism is a larger light that has been an inspiration to a lot of other groups, including that of Ali Hadith, because Ali Hadith is nothing but a Wahhabism, nothing but Wahhabism, which is also at some point of time was called as Wahhabi movement, but they wanted it to be, because at some point of time the British actually made it to look like a devil, and they said that those of them who are fighting against the British, who are fighting in the name of religion, they're all Wahhabis. That's the sort of terminology that was used. It is because of this problem, at some point of time, they decided not to use the term Wahhabi, and then they wanted to look at either call it as Al-Hadith or whichever way one wants to call it as. It's all larger part of the Salafi movement that we see in different parts of the country and different parts of the world as well. Now, Deoband, on the one hand, because I'm not essentially touching Wahhabism, because that's been there all over. We know about it, how people have drawn influences from that one, starting with Al-Qaeda to everyone who has been so far. For them, invariably it has been. But there is also other school which thinks, or the only difference that they see or problem that they see with Wahhabism is the type of dissatisfaction that Wahhabis or Wahhab had for the jurisprudence or the type of schools that existed at that point of time, by thinking that they are all following some sort of a blind faith. That's the only thing that has made difference here. Apart from that one, invariably all of them agree with what was required, and they see that as a revival movement. Now, the Deoband movement, if you look in, which again continues to call itself as a revival movement, is a Hanafi school of Islam, Hanafi school of jurisprudence. In fact, at one point of time when Taliban took over, everybody across in the West and many other places started writing about, saying that the type of ideology that's been followed by Taliban is not emerged in West Asia, it's not emerged elsewhere, but it has emerged in somewhere where it is not even a majority religion, that's in India. And they started putting the Deobands into the light. Now, invariably, the Deobandis wanted to distance themselves from that one and say, we have nothing to do with one, because we have 150 years of history. And we started off with the Darul Uloom Deoband Seminary, which was founded in 1866, which is important for the simple reason, because the Deoband movement came at a time when the Mughals or the Muslim or Islamic rule was getting end here. And they wanted a revival of that one, and they also wanted to show the other side as kafirs, other side as people who are not eligible to rule. And they thought this overall control by the Muslims was very, very problematic. But the greater blow also came to them at some point of time when the Ottoman Empire got destroyed. But essentially, this is when it happened, where we see people like Muhammad Qasim, Nanatvi, Rashid Ahmad Gangohi. All these people were very, very important, because it after the first rebellion that we see, and with the collapse of the Mughal rule, and then they wanted to do something, and they wanted to take it forward, because they simply wanted to resist the British colonial rule. Now, this is where some of them had an issue with even the Deobandis by saying, how can the Deobandis be part of the national movement? But the subtle idea was very, very clear. They were not actually fighting for the end of colonial rule, more specific to the Indian subcontinent. But their idea was that they destroyed Islamic rule, and that should have perhaps continued, so that hatred towards what they had done was the one which pushed them to bring in that one. So, but they see themselves as larger part of the Sunnah that they talk about here, and it has spread to many other countries. More so, it has been very, very influential in South Asia, though there are different versions of it that came in Pakistan, different versions that came as in Afghanistan, and in even other places that we see. Invariably, all of this has happened because their participation in the pan-Islamist Khilafat movement to everything has been one of the major case of concerns. And they at some point of time were also branded as people who were following the Wahhabi school, but then they wanted to show, no, that's not exactly part. So then the Deoband had two components. One is the is the one which would largely want to guide what is happening in India. The other one was essentially looking at the madrasa. They wanted to train youngsters so that they don't fall into the trap of the Western idea. They don't fall into the Christian or Hindu scholars, because this is also a very important time where the Arya Samaj to many others were working, where they wanted to bring back the Muslims to others back to Hinduism. And that is something that disturbed invariably the Deobandis, and they wanted to do this one. So even today, one of their major case of concern, though they would want to pretend and show themselves as very tolerant people and all that, invariably their idea is to see to it that as many as possible are trained under the Deoband ideology. Apart from that one, they are kept within the fold of Islam. Now, coming to the other interesting one, which is also called as the Wahhabi movement itself, that is Ali Hadish, is simply meaning that the people of Hadith. They means they draw themselves only from the Quran and the Hadith, not anything else. They don't believe in anything else, and they are very, very clear that they are a Salafi movement which emerged in the northern part of India. And they believe in some sort of teachings or an outcome of some of the teachings of Sayyid Ahmad Shahid, Sayyid Nazir Hussain, as well as Nawab Siddiq Hasan Khan. Now, what said is that when many other movements were happening, some of the traditions that they wanted to hold on to is the 18th century tradition of Shah Waliullah Dehlavi and the Wahhabi movement. There where the connection is between all these people. They also call them as, apart from being the Wahhabi, Al-Hadish, they also call them as Muawidin. That's a name that they want to call themselves as, because again, they emerged as a distinct group in 1864, having claimed themselves to be the people again opposing the idea of what I before itself mentioned, which is called as the Taqlid. And then they wanted to tell here lot of bad things have happened and lot of people are moving out of it. So we want to bring in Tawheed. We also have to make sure that we stick to what we call as the independent legal reasoning, which is all the time important in Islam, which is called as the Ijtihad. And because of that, they wanted to make sure and they also wanted to see to it that the doctrinal tendencies that were pushed by some of those schools of jurisprudence had to be stopped. Now, how is this working? If you look in among all the groups, as of now in India, this is the most dangerous one. But this one doesn't directly push people, or they would not talk about starting a terrorist organizations or anything of that sort, but they are the ultra ones. They are the ones who control themselves or control their own group members to everybody and say they are the true Muslims. They don't even give space for people like Barelvis, and they would simply term all of these people from Ahmadiyyas to every other group, including the Shias, as non-Islamic, because for them, within Islam, nothing else exists apart from just the Islam. For them, there is no categorization of the Shia, Sunni, as well as this Sufi. For them, they are super clear that this is only this much, and they don't even want to engage with anybody else. This is precisely why Saudi Arabia is interested, and they keep sending them money. They help them out in all sorts of things that are happening. The third one that we are talking about here is the Barelvi one, which was Ahmad Riza Barelvi, started by him, a very, very prominent Islamic scholar at that particular point from Bareilly in Uttar Pradesh. And came again as a revival movement, but differently, trying to do things in a bit different way. Because to a very, very large extent, this is where some roots are so tied up to the society, because they had understood that in one or the other way, if we don't understand a society that is ridden with caste, that's having so many other subcults to everything, there is no possibility of they making a mark in people's life. It is precisely here that the Barelvis thought that they should be much more accommodative of all those groups who were forcefully brought into this Islamic world. They were forcefully brought into understanding Islam, or in one or the other way, they wanted to have as many people as possible who would look up to the tombs, who would look up to the people who are powerful, or whom they thought had the power to make or perform miracles, to a lot of other things. Among the groupings, if we look in, to an extent, one can say This one is a much, what you say, inclusive one among the type of groups that are existing. They're not Puritans, but they also would want to call them as Ahli Sunnat wa Jamaat. That was the popular movement that happened in Barelvi itself. Now, when we say this one, they essentially look at the Sufi orders that includes the Chistis, the Qadris, Soharwardis, Naqshbandis, to everybody, and they also they respect all that the other two schools that we are talking about, and including the third one, that is Wahhabism. All of this, they have all the respect and everything, but at the same time, their only earnest feeling has been that those people should allow them also to continue. They should allow them to, and they should be inclusive to include all those people and their understanding to everything. But they have had lot of scholars and others say. They say, yes, we agree to Tawheed, we agree to Sharia, we agree to Fiqh, we agree to everything that is required here. But at the same time, it cannot be so much of hindrance that it doesn't allow us to go beyond what has been spoken, and that extreme form of tawheed is very, very problematic, because this is one very important aspect that we see. But as I said in the beginning, all of them operate in different ecosystem, but what they essentially bring out is a common factor, that one fine day across the world in different platforms, there will be Islam, and Islam will take over the world. And we are all working as a confluence to come together, maybe in different formats, but we all put equal amount of efforts in whatever way that is possible to capture as many people as possible within the fold of Islam, and see to it that one day Islam is the one, and all of them believe very, very clearly that Islam is the only one that can bring peace, and to that one they perhaps enter into all possible ways of it. But though they're seeing that because of the rise of the right wing, because of the type of government that we have and all those things, they would want to resist, and they would want to say that none of us are included in any of these activities. These are the fringe elements to everything. But invariably, what is being taught in the madrasas, what is being given to them as a basic lesson, starts off with saying that what is all wrong with others, rather than saying what is the glory with us. That's the problem that erupts in all these three schools, and the one which remains above. That's why I don't keep Wahhabism at the equivalent level. Wahhabism is an inspiration that's been influential all over, and these three have drawn things from there. This is exactly the problem that we are able to see, and because of that, where we have arrived is that it's very, very difficult to push any one group to say, because even for that matter, Hadish had an issue even comparing some or telling someone that they have had something to do with the Islamic State, or saying that they are directly influential, or they are recruiting people. Nobody knows. This is another difficult part. None of us none of the studies actually also show that these people are directly involved in sending people to ISIS, or sending people to West Asia, or sending people to the conflict zones wherever that is required, because that's the place where one can be let's say influenced by some other work, or they can be lone wolf warriors, to all sorts of things that we see in counterterrorism literature. They are involved in one or the other way, but each of them pose a major threat, because they teach and they preach on a daily basis that this is a major case of concern that has to be brought in, where one day India, including India also should be ruled by the Muslims. I'll stop it here. Thank you for your patient listening.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nandkishore. You have actually done full justice to your subject when you spoke about Wahhabism and Bareli movement and Deobandi. And after all, these are all offshoots, and we have to look at the larger perspective. And the larger perspective is what we are seeing in the world today, the Islamic Jihad. We have seen it happening in Israel today. We have seen what happened there. And we cannot expect a similar kind of a situation to take place in our own country. I'm extremely grateful to you for this wonderful talk. And I would just sum it up, this entire session in which we have had such wonderful discussions. We had Lalit touching upon the important issue. Yes, Lalit, I'll come to you. is touching upon an important issue. And all he spoke about Kashmir. Yes, Lalit, you wanted to say something? You're muted.
Unmute yourself.
Yeah. Kindly unmute him. He's having a problem in unmuting himself.
Let me see, sir. I think I cannot do that. Okay.
And just try as well if it is possible.
I think that control is with him only, not with us.
Yes, sir. I cannot. I can only mute, sir. I cannot unmute him.
I think Major General, you go ahead till he fixes.
Acha. Oh yes. No. Okay. I don't think we can get him. So he covered the Kashmir Jihad in a very, very fine manner. And the issue here is today all the three speakers have dealt with some form of Islamic movement happening in our own neighborhood, for which we need to be wary. Especially Bangladesh was a revelation for not only me, it would be for most of the researchers here today, that what a kind of Jamaat-e-Islam movement is actually shaping up there, and how we all, as citizens of this country, are going to get affected in the near future. And the larger question is that is Bangladesh going to be the next Afghanistan? So
Can I?
Oh yes, okay, please.
Yeah, just wanted to compliment Dr. Nandikishore and Dr. Anshuman Behra. So one was about, I start with Dr. Nandikishore spoke about al Hadith. You know, ironically in Kashmir, we have banned Jamaat-e-Islami, which why I was talking about in adequacy of understanding of what Kashmir, what India has on hand in Kashmir in terms of Kashmir Jihad. We have banned Jamaat-e-Islami, but not Ahl Hadith. You know what Jamaat-e-Islam done? They removed their that boards and put Ahl Hadith there. So
Yeah.
the ecosystem continues to thrive. That's
Yeah,
number
yeah.
one. Number two, when Professor Dr. Behra was talking about, rightly talking about that deprivation or poverty is not a reason for jihad. I recall once I had an opportunity to moderate a program on anti-terrorism and this terror funding. And we had, this was for GCTC platform, and we had then Foreign Secretary of Sri Lanka on board. And he said, he said something very interesting. He said, we had this Easter bombings, and in that, the bombers came in Audis. The bombers came in Audis. So this notion that you can reverse jihad with development money investment is wrong.
It's a
Thirdly,
misnomer.
I just want to highlight here, as we all agree that jihad
Try to
cannot
be
be.
brief.
Yeah, last one,
then
10 seconds,
we have the
sir. Last
next
one,
session starting.
last one. Last one is that we cannot annihilate jihad altogether. We can only contain it. And one of the ways is to, of course, to eliminate the ecosystem that enables jihad to exist. And also in terms of Kashmir, we have to minimize, we have to deprive the jihadists of geopolitical space in Kashmir. And for that, we need to create an demographic foothold in Kashmir, which we have been always talking about, creating a union territory for Kashmiri Hindus to come back to Kashmir, so that Indian state, Indian nation has a demographic foothold in Kashmir. That's what I want to end it with. Thank you.
Okay, Lalit, just take General Dushyant, if you don't mind, we can take 2-3 questions now, if it's okay with you.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Lalit,
You can go ahead. Yeah. You can go ahead,
thank you
Rajan.
very much. Thank you very much. Lalit, there is a question from you from Abhishek Kumar. He says that from Amandeep Kumar, sorry, he says, how do you see targeted killings of laborers from UP, Bihar in Kashmir, especially after the abrogation of Article 370, as we have seen a boom in tourism there after August 2019?
I think what he's trying to say is that in spite of the fact that tourism is booming there, you have a targeted killings there. As I
Yes,
said,
yes.
Kashmir Jihad has evolved into a hybrid war now, like Jihad country everywhere else. We have a very tight security grid. It's very impossible for them to carry out those, mass killings and mass rape and abductions in Kashmir. So they are picking on a target, but the agenda is same: to kill one and create fear psychosis. As for tourism, I can tell you everybody, I have seen Hindi film in Kabul when tanks were rolling outside on the Kabul streets. So tourism is no reason to statistics about tourism and no reason to conclude that you have controlled Jihad. That's what I say. The Hindus remain on target of Kashmiri jihadists. Hindus remain and they continue to kill them wherever they find possible, whether it be local Aborigine Kashmiri Hindu or a Hindu who has migrated from outside, or any Muslim, Muslim who they think is symbolizing Indian presence in Kashmir. Period.
Oh, there are two more questions actually they addressed to me. It says that do you think civil society is increasingly becoming a threat to India's national security? And if it is, then should it find a mention in India's upcoming much needed national security strategy of India to chart out a way to tackle it in the times to come? Very good question, because civil society has a very important role to play today in ensuring that these kind of elements don't function in our country. I fully agree with you that civil society has a role to play, and there has to be a set of guidelines also available in which a civil society can take part in the internal security of the country. And I also recommend that, as you have said, rightly said, that the national security strategy of India must have a mention of the role of civil society. I think this national security strategy is in its final stage of compilation, and I'm sure that when we have a look at the first look at it, we will find a mention of civil society. Another question he raises is that the NSA Ajit Pawal has often raised the issue that a conventional way of war is increasingly becoming outdated, and the civil society is gaining ground to create internal conflict in India to make it weak. I think we have covered this in the first part itself. And then he talks about the Hamas chief, Khalid Mashal, addressing online rally taken out by the Solidarity Youth Movement, expressing support for the Palestinian people in Malappuram on October 27. Slogans were raised. This issue was covered in our discussions by one of the speakers, where we are finding this kind of Muslim or Muslim leaders who are supporting Hamas and who are coming out openly in public forums, and especially on the TV channels, as Lalit has also actually mentioned that they are very, very vocal about their support to Hamas. So you see, ours is a country where we allow a freedom of speech, but I agree with you that there has to be a limit to freedom of speech, because on the number of TV channels I am also coming in, I find that there is no control by either the anchors or by anybody else to contain this kind of a thought, because these channels are viewed by a large number of people of our country. They form opinions, and we have to be extremely careful in our news channels what we are speaking, and that there has to be a moderation kind of a thing. And I'm sure the Minister of Information Technology, who's coming up with the new IT Act, is going to cover these aspects on media also, because deservingly, you see, our country, a lot of problems emanate from the social media, and especially we have seen the Delhi riots, and we have seen other in the new also the things taking place. So definitely I agree with you. These are important issues which need to be deliberated upon. So that's it. We have finished with a wonderful session. I want to thank all our three speakers. It's been a wonderful 2 hours plus, and lot of learnings for me also. And I think our researchers, the young researchers of this forum, have been largely benefited. And in the end, I want to compliment Yashish and Satya and the entire team with you, you youngsters. I mean, people need to emulate you, because you people are like a one-man army or a two-man army yourself, and organizing a seminar or a webinar of this kind and getting hold of such eminent people. I can see Jal Dushyant, he's my batchmate and he's a very, very eminent personality. I'm extremely happy to see Lalit and all other speakers who have come. The ambassador of Israel was here. So my compliments to you for this wonderful effort, and keep it up. Jai Hind.
Thank you so much, sir. As we conclude this session, I would like to extend my gratitude to the session chair, Major General Dr. Rajan Kochar, our esteemed session chair, and to tell all our distinguished panelists for their thought-provoking presentations and discussions. Your insights and expertise have significantly contributed to our understanding of the complex issues surrounding jihad in the Indian subcontinent and Bharat's national security. I thank everyone once again for your valuable contribution, which has made this session both informative and thought-provoking. Thank you so much.
Thank you.